Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. It is episode 370, which means that this is another edition of Fly Fishing Accusations, in which I respond to reader, listener, and viewer questions, comments, and accusations. And this week we have an accusation. So let's dive right on into that one. Maybe I'm overselling it. It's not that much of an accusation, but it still falls in those lines. This is what Tom writes. This is in response to episode 361. So this is almost 10 episodes ago. And that was on used fly fishing gear. And I gave in that podcast some of my advice as to how to find what you should get and maybe what you should spend on used fly fishing gear. So Tom wrote this: "Good podcast, but can't believe that you didn't go into length about avoiding scammers on forums, Facebook, or other venues. Huge, all caps, issue." Well, I can't agree with you more, Tom. And if I didn't bring that up or didn't bring that up sufficiently in the podcast, then shame on me, because it's a real issue. If you are buying from a fly shop, then you're probably pretty safe. If you are buying from a big platform like eBay, you're probably safe. Of course, there's bad apples all the way around. I've bought from big companies and it hasn't turned out the way that I wanted. Thankfully, I've been able to get restitution in some way, shape, or form. But if you are buying from Facebook, I would say do it in person. And if you have any reservations about your safety in doing that, then absolutely do it in a very appropriate way. I look at these listings, and I'll give you a great example. There's a guy who he and his wife sell fly fishing gear just a couple towns over. And just by their listings, I can tell that it's legit. The gear's legit. It's consistent posts with different stuff, but you're looking at it, and I can tell it's New Hampshire. I can tell if I were to show up someplace, it wouldn't be like I'm being catfished for catfishing gear. And so just keep an eye on stuff like that. Make sure the communication is good. They're not changing things. They're not being shifty. You agree to terms before you get there. If you are like, hey, I want that. A lot of times when I look at rods, I'll go and say, hey, let me cast it first, because I'm not going to just bring, that, $200 bills for a $200 fly rod and show up and it's got chunks missing out of the handle and there's scratches that weren't in the pictures. And, maybe it's worth $150 or something like that. So all of that said, yeah, be careful when you are looking at stuff on Facebook Marketplace. It's a wonderful opportunity, but again, if you're asking them to ship something, there's very little accountability there. And I haven't done enough of that kind of transaction on Facebook Marketplace to really know one way or another. Everything I've done has always been meet in person. I know not everybody's comfortable in doing that. Personally, I only really feel secure in both my purchase and also in the transaction itself if I was meeting in person. Now, forums are, you're really taking a flyer on it. I sold a flyer on a forum once, and the guy, Venmoed me a couple $100, and I was like, this person has no clue who I am. Like, they've got my Venmo information, and that's it. And if Venmo has ways to get restitution, then I guess that's what they could do. But it was not even like a local fly fishing forum. It was a nationwide fly fishing forum. And I was selling a fly rod. Now, to be fair, I was selling at a really, really low price. So if you were convinced enough that I was a real person, then you wanted to go after this great deal, then I guess you're willing to roll the dice, and it worked out, obviously. I sent him the rod. But I don't know if I would buy something that way. I don't know if I would. But I would say just pay attention. If there's any rating and review system, make sure you tap into that. And if you are concerned, I would say then don't stress out by shopping in ways that are less than authenticated. If this is a concern for you about identity theft, about getting conned, about not getting what you asked for, then just don't mess with it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the headache. It's not worth the drama. It's not worth the few bucks that you're going to save rather than going through something like eBay or another reputable seller of equipment. So that was my my take on that, and I appreciate Tom for bringing that up to me regarding podcast episode 361. Okay, the next question is from Jeff. Jeff writes this: "Dear Matthew, Question I've been meaning to ask for some time and that may be suitable for an accusations episode. Hey, you're spot on, Jeff. What authors have influenced your writing style? The organization of your podcast suggests a background in education, possibly in the classroom and certainly in the pulpit. But I've tried to pin down your writing style and influences with little success. And he says, I hope that you and your family have a blessed Christmas and a very happy New Year. Well, thank you, Jeff. I wish that you have a good Christmas and holiday season as well. Everyone else. Of course, we'll talk about that as we get closer. So I honestly have kind of racked my brain, and I don't have a good answer for Jeff, and I don't have a good answer for anyone. But two things. First, if you're like, oh, you sound like this, let me know. Be happy to hear it because I can't figure out who I sound like or who I write like or whatever. And I think there's a particular reason for it, and that is I really try to sound unique. I try to sound like myself. Now, I know that's impossible. I know that we are the product of so many influences. I'm sure if you listen to my father speak, you say, oh yeah, I get it. Apparently, we talk fast, the both of us. If you listen to some of the men that kind of had discipled me in faith in like a pastoral capacity, be like, oh yeah, when you preach, I hear this guy or I hear this person. But I also, like I said, really do my best to not sound like other people, to be myself. And that's not because I think I'm the best. I want to kind of start from scratch when I present information. And I think that's true in my writing, in my podcasting, when I give my book review videos, when I'm in the pulpit, when I'm writing for church. I want it to be as much of me as it can be. Now, of course, if I'm preaching the Bible, I don't want to be too much of me, if you get what I'm saying, but I don't want it to be sounding like I'm trying to mimic a different preacher or something like that. But here's what I do and how I do it. When I read a book, whether it be, let's just use fly fishing for an example right now. If I'm reading a fly fishing book, if I read a John Gierach novel, if I read a Tom Rosenbauer book about how to go fly fishing, if I read whatever it may be, like right now I'm actually reading a Ernest Hemingway book, but it's not a fly fishing book. I read that. I do a couple of things, especially within the fly fishing realm. Number one is I try to enjoy it. I don't have enough time to read fly fishing books I don't enjoy, okay? I read a lot of stuff that I'm not super excited about for work, especially if I'm dealing with topics that are like I'm critical of or I'm questioning. But for fly fishing, I try to enjoy it, okay? So that's step one. Step two is I try to glean the information for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to read it just to say I read it, to add it to my list of books I read for 2025. Or to check a box off. I want to glean information, and whether that be just the joy of a story, or if that be fly fishing technique, I want to glean that. So step one, enjoy it. Step two, get information from it. And actually, a big piece of that is, what am I going to communicate about this book, its content, and its makeup within a fly fishing context to people? All right. And the same thing is true to a certain degree for work, for ministry. I read books and I think, who would I recommend this book to? I like to think about that with any book I'm reading. Who would benefit from this in my congregation? And that way I kind of have that. Or what problems in life would cause me to recommend this book to somebody. So, I try to enjoy it. Secondly, I try to get the information both for my own personal growth in fly fishing, and so I can recommend it. But then thirdly, I do the best I can, and it certainly isn't perfect, to kind of partition the writing style off in my brain and appreciate it as something that I don't adapt to, or I don't incorporate wholly into the way that I write or the way that I speak. Now, I know this is impossible. Our brains are not impermeable from one part to the next. So you may say, hey, you wrote that article, and the way that your analogies sound, I can tell you have been reading some of C.S. Lewis's essays. Because the way that you are using turns of phrase, the way that you are making metaphors, that sounds a lot like the way that Lewis does it in some of his philosophical essays. And I'm sure that could be accurately leveled against me. Or I read Cormac McCarthy, right? And you could say some of your run-on sentences that add, flowery prose in it. I can tell that in recent history you've read Cormac McCarthy. I'm like, all right, that's fine. I'm sure that gets in there, but and I'm positive it does. And I know that when I hear a sermon, or I listen to a lecture, or I read a Puritan, or I go to the fly fishing show, or I watch, somebody tying flies on YouTube, that stuff gets in there. But I really do, and I've made this kind of a point for not just casting across, but so much of my ministry, like glean out of that what I can, but never try to emulate unless it's intentional. There's been times where I've done things where I'm like, I kind of want to try to write like this person, but even in that, I say this is kind of weird and alien to try to write like somebody else. So Jeff, it's a great question. Yeah, as far as my background goes, certainly in education, um, and the counseling room, and in ministry, particularly within eye towards teaching and preaching. And so I'm sure that really influences the way. Like, hey, these accusation episodes are really 3-point outlines. And that's every good Baptist preacher, right? So that's a great question, and I'll continue to think about it. But like I said, if anybody out there is like, hey, you sound like this, then yeah, let me know. And if I've never listened to that person or read that person before, then I'd be really interested in what I sound like. All right. So first question, accusation had to do with buying gear online. Second one was Jeff's about my influences. And last today, John writes, an interesting breakdown of fall spectacles, Matthew. And this is on my post called Salmon Kingdom. It's a modern day parable. Why don't you go ahead and give that a read and let me know who I am riffing off of there. He goes on to say, I admit to being briefly included in the first few groups. And again, this is talking about of the combat fishing of like the Erie tributaries, but quickly tired of being a performer in that circus. That scenario mostly applies to the famous salmon runs, and the anglers participating in the spectacle do so with full knowledge of the combat conditions. Meanwhile, I found that almost every tributary, no matter how small, has migratory fish at some point during the fall. All that was necessary to find them was a nice quiet walk through the woods. My salmon fishing is done in the numerous ravines of Toronto, where I can play tug of war all day and not see another soul. Well, John, thank you for that, and it's a phenomenal bit of insight that I want to talk about for a few minutes. So I have had days where I've enjoyed fishing with people left and right of me. And why is that? Well, it's because I either know the people that are to the left and right of me, or get to know the people that are to the left and right of me. It's that we're all not catching fish, or that we're all catching fish. It's an interesting situation, and you might say, I never want to do that. And I would say that that's an okay impulse, but at the same time, if you've never tried it, there's some interesting things. I mean, people eating and drinking up on the shore and being nice. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. But when it's good, it can be good. But I would have to agree wholeheartedly with John that my preference would to not be to go fishing in the midst of the crazy. So that's not 100% what the post of Salmon Kingdom was about, but I do think that it's worth touching on that. Yeah, the solitude is a lot more fun, and I found fishing primarily Ohio and Pennsylvania, and a little bit of New York tributaries, that yeah, just a little bit of walking gets you really out into some more open water, and you might not have that one long stretch where all the fish are staging to move up to the next hole, but you're going to find smaller versions of that you have to yourself. So would you rather the A plus hole with 10 other people, or the B hole by yourself? You know what I mean. So I think that is a way to look at that, and you doing some walking, and you know what, the C plus stuff is great, and you're going to find some A minus things that are just about as good as the A plus, but you're going to have it virtually to yourself, or maybe with another couple of anglers. And yes, what does it require? Walking. One truism that remains in fly fishing is that if you are willing to put in even the most minimal amount of effort, you are going to find water and fish that are your own. This is not to say that people are lazy. Well, no, it is. People are lazy, and they're creatures of habit. If they caught a fish in this spot, then they're going to go back to this spot. But to get to that spot, they had to walk to it. And now if you want to walk a little further, you're going to find more spots. And I would just say that, especially if you are fishing a situation like this, and this can be many, many different circumstances across the country. Anytime there's migratory fish moving from a lake into a river, moving upstream, there's going to be those spots that are popular because they are some sort of staging area, or there's some sort of obstruction, a dam or a waterfall or something like that. But there's fish that are probably all over the place that you just got to walk to. And I would agree wholeheartedly with John that the smaller creeks are sometimes just as productive, and they present you with more opportunities. Especially if you think about like a trout stream that's usually a trout creek, year for most of the year, and then for a couple months out of the year, big old steelhead or salmon or migratory brown trout move into it. Well, where are they going to go? They're going to go in a lot of the same places that fish feed for the rest of the year, and these are going to be smaller, more intimate streams, and you just got to approach it the same way. I find fish in just the most remarkable places, especially in those shoulder seasons of early spring and late fall, where fish will move into some really, really skinny water. And I found this to be true with like brown trout in spring creeks. I found this to be true with steelhead in the Lake Erie tributaries. It's just amazing and remarkable where fish will go. And so putting in a little bit of legwork will really give you a lot of opportunities and give you just presents you with options for fishing in a way that maybe lines up a lot more with how you like to fish. But you know what? If you like the combat fishing, if you like reeling in super fast because the guy next to you is going to be fighting a steelhead for the next 15 minutes, then by all means, knock yourself out. I am not going to yuck your yum. All right, so there are the three things that I'm going to address this week. As always, let me know, Matthew at castingacross.com, if you have any questions, comments, or accusations. I will do my best to get back to you. If you've emailed me in the past and I haven't got back to you, email me again. I'll apologize, and then I will answer whatever question it is that I neglected to answer. But it is, I've said before, one of my favorite aspects of casting across is being able to interact. Just more information coming in the next couple of weeks, but I've enjoyed doing this face-to-face at like the fly fishing shows. I'll be in Marlborough, Massachusetts, and Edison, New Jersey again with some seminars and presentations and destination theaters lined up. So if you listen and you plan on going to those shows, stay tuned on the Fly Fishing Show's website and here on Casting Across, and that information about when those presentations are going to be will be posted. And then I'd love to have you come and sit through the presentation and then introduce yourself, and then we can talk and talk about whatever you want to talk about. We talk about C.S. Lewis philosophical essays or fishing for steelhead in Lake Erie. Whatever you want to talk about, I'll gladly have that conversation. This week on Casting Across, the first article is called Dark Skies Fly Fishing Winter 2025. So I've been writing for Dark Skies Fly Fishing all of 2025. I think this is the third or the fourth magazine that I have contributed to, and I have plans to continue that into 2026. It's been a lot of fun, and I get to be featured with some other fantastic writers with a emphasis on the Mid-Atlantic region, but certainly much, much more broad appeal for a lot of the posts and articles there. This month's article, this quarter's article, I should say, was called The Letort Library. And again, for a lot of Pennsylvania anglers, this is kind of, right in their wheelhouse. But this is just the amazing library of books that have a tight connection to the Letort Spring Run flowing through Carlisle, Pennsylvania. If you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that this is a special stream for me. And the amount of books that I have on my bookshelf, and then there's even more that are out there that really kind of bubbled up from this little spring creek is amazing. It may be the highest words per capita of any small creek that's out there. So anyway, check out that article by getting yourself a copy of Dark Skies Fly Fishing, either digitally or in print. You can figure out how to do that through the link on the website. And then Wednesday's article is called Video, Fly Fishing Your National Parks, in which I review, ever so briefly, in fact, only in a minute, 25 national parks to fly fish by Mr. and Mrs. Gunn. And this is a fun book. This is a book that my kids enjoy flipping through because you learn something about national parks. You learn about what you would do if you wanted to go fishing there. You learn about some of the other things that are happening. It's like a travel guide, like a fly fishing guidebook, and like a vacation planner, all wrapped up in 250 pages, something like that. It is, and I talk about this in the video, it is not exhaustive, but it is comprehensive. And it gives you that static information that you can take with you in your car. It doesn't require Wi-Fi. And also, it gives some kind of like unique local expertise on each one of the national parks and how and why you would want to fish it. So you don't use it by itself, but you use it as the springboard to get online or make those phone calls or head to the fly shop to get more information. But it's a fun book to have on your bookshelf. So you can watch that video, and then there's a link for where you can pick up that book on the post called Fly Fishing Your National Parks. This week's recommendation on the podcast is a direct link to the weather that is outside here in New Hampshire, which is very, very cold and very, very windy. And I'm very happy that I own a pair of Simms Windstopper fold-over fishing mitts. Now, they're expensive, right? They're $79.95, but I think I got them because I had a gift card somewhere, or they were on sale. I did not pay $80 for these. However, they do a few things great. And to be fair, Simms offers a similar fold over mitt in a non-windstopper fleece. Then I think they're like $40. You can get them on the Simms website as well as on like Bass Pro Shop. But I'm talking about the ones I have, which is the Windstopper fold over fishing mitt. So they are like fingerless gloves, but instead of having fingers that fold back over, it is a mitten top that folds over. So this is my preferred handwear for winter fishing. I have tried the neoprene gloves. I have tried the fingerless gloves. I have tried all that stuff. But my favorite so far, it might change in the future, is the Simms fold over fishing mitt, particularly the Windstopper variant. And there's a great way to secure that mitten top when you flip it over because you don't need it or because you are tying a fly on. But I hate having cold hands. Like, I feel like I have a really high tolerance for it to be cold, but then when it gets really cold, then I'm done and I need my hands covered up. I can go hatless. I can do it in like a puffy vest and have like exposed arms. But man, if my hands are cold, I'm unhappy. So I'm a big fan of these. They are pricey. But if you want these, if you want to look at one of the other the variants that Simms offers, then you will be able to find those on their website. And I'll put a link directly to the Windstopper fold-over fishing mitt on this podcast show notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast app and then leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.